I was home by myself with my dog, sick dog, 2 freaking turkeys. One on Saturday, one on Monday. We watched Tangled and then Frozen. They're both turkeys. Great day. First one was okay. Second one was really good.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was talking about economic multipliers and growing the local economy, which I don't think technically.
So I would like to see you introduce yourself as the
Not today.
Any Marxist-Leninists left?
Pardon?
Any Marxist-Leninists left?
I'm sure there are a few.
You used to be able to vote for their party during the provincial elections.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, totally. I remember those guys being on the ballot.
Two of them is this great Ross and Dow.
I just ran into Laura at Starbucks.
Welcome everybody to Law Amendments Committee. It's Tuesday, October the 9th. My name is Gordon Wilson. I'm the MLA for Claire Digby. I'll be your chair for today. And we'll begin with introductions with Ms. Zahn.
Lenore Zan.
Sorry.
MLA for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River. Good morning.
Good morning, Claudia Chender, MLA for Dartmouth South.
Brad Johns, MLA, Sackville and Beaverbank.
Bon matin, Chris D'Entremont, Deputy Dargyle Barrington.
Gordon Heb Council.
Gordon Wilson, MLA for Claire Digby.
Karen Kinley, Assistant Clerk.
Benjamin Jessam, I represent Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Good morning, Rafa Di Costanzo, MLA, Clayton Park West.
Hugh McKay, representing Chester St. Margaret's.
Good morning, everyone. Brendan McGuire, Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you. And just before we start, just a few regular housekeeping things. There's no flash photography for anybody other than the media. That includes MLAs. And there is, or photography period. Yes, legal terms there. We will have no cell phone use here also. Please put them on vibrate if you can. We will start with the speakers to come up. They'll have 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions. I'll try and give you a 2-minute warning when we get close. So we'll be starting with Mr. John Sutherland, Executive Vice President, Nova Scotia Automobile Dealers. Welcome, Mr. Sutherland. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. Thank you for taking time to hear from our association this morning. Our association represents 120 of the 125 new car franchise dealers here in Nova Scotia. They represent and sell new vehicles from both domestic and international vehicle manufacturers, and collectively our dealers employ about 4,700 Nova Scotians. We're here today in solid support of the Transportation Safety Act. We want to acknowledge the work over many years and successive governments that have brought us today to the opportunity to consider new legislation in what is a very old piece of legislation. I would say that I would also appreciate very much the work that our civil service team has done over the years on this, and in particular Mr. Paul Arsenault, a former registrar of motor vehicles and someone who's heavily engaged with this project. Paul has been a champion of this for many years, and we certainly appreciate the work that he has done. I would like to point out that a major interest of our association are the licensing provisions that license businesses and those who sell automobiles to the Nova Scotian public. I think it's a positive move that much of the detail and rigor in this licensing process will be seen in regulations as they will be developed after this legislation is adopted. And our principal concern, I think, in the public interest is that the rigor of licensing, and particularly the requirements of businesses to deal fairly and to use good business practices when dealing with Nova Scotians, will be upheld and maintained and expanded in the regulations. Mr. Chairman, I have two pieces of information which I've brought in today, and the clerk has circulated to you. One is a letter from the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, and this is an association that represents Canadian vehicle manufacturers. They have reviewed the Act, and while I'm not speaking for them, I am taking the opportunity of introducing this letter to the committee. Their principal concern, I think, is to ensure that as legislation is developed in Canada as it relates to the technical requirements and standards of vehicles, that we have consistency in Canada between jurisdictions, and as well, as much as possible, consistency internationally, because as you know today, the vehicle manufacturing business is an integrated business. And as you'll note in the letter, members of the committee, most vehicles sold in Canada today are not assembled in Canada. So it's important that as we look at future standards, particularly for autonomous vehicles, that those standards be consistent again with standards in other provinces and internationally. The other piece of correspondence that I've brought in today is an email from the Canadian Motor Vehicle Arbitration Program. And there is a concern with the Act where the Act notes the reference to a lemon. A lemon is a U.S. term. We do not have lemon laws here in Canada, and in place of lemon laws, we do have the Motor Vehicle Arbitration Program. Their preference would be that the Act be amended, and they've offered two options for the committee's consideration. I should point out that these pieces of correspondence have been provided to Mr. Arsenault and his team, so I'm sure that they will be given due consideration by our civil service. So, Mr. Chairman, I know you've got a busy day, and my time is limited. So with that, I'll respond to any questions, if I may.
Thank you very much. Any questions from any of the members? Mr. D'Entremont.
So looking quickly at the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association letter, so it does talk about autonomous vehicles and basically the issue requiring a driver in the driver's seat and the capability for the driver to take control of the vehicle at any time would eliminate the possibility of introducing SAE level 4 and 5 that may or do not have driver control. So maybe just can you expand a little bit on the non-driver? Because everything we've seen at this point is that there has to be somebody sitting in that seat, yes, except for a few of those taxis apparently that have run over people. So I just want to get a clarification on that.
Mr. D'Entremont, you have to appreciate that at my age, sure, and as one who uses Microsoft on his computer, and frequently I have to reboot the thing. I will be perhaps along with many, impressed by when we get to a standard where autonomous vehicles are safe. I think I can't speak for the manufacturers. I know that there's tremendous development being undertaken, and I think eventually when it gets there, no different than when eventually we landed on the moon, we did so safely. So I think the concern would be that we don't end up with a piece of legislation that, if technology improves and advances, that all of a sudden the Act is out of sync with current technology. I think today, and given some of the media about accidents involving autonomous vehicles, I think there's just concern that we want to be sure that that vehicle has someone that is in control. That may well change in time. So if that's something that can be amended and dealt with in regulation as we go forward, that may be a better way to deal with that.
Okay. Secondly, on the issue of lemon, what did you say around what law do we have actually protecting people when they do buy a car that?
Well, my understanding is that at one time, individual Canadian jurisdictions were considering the establishment of U.S.-like state legislation, or known as lemon laws, and that manufacturers in Canada, both domestic and international, agreed to the establishment and operation of the arbitration program as a replacement for those laws. My sense is that program, actually, vehicles that qualify to be handled in that program you can get a vehicle into the Canadian program faster and with fewer faults, if you will, than you could in a U.S. program. So that manufacturers, I believe, would argue that our program in Canada is actually better and more protective of the public as well. I think there's a technicality in there as well which says that lemon is not a term that's used in other provincial jurisdictions. So while we may have that vehicle, if we brand a vehicle as a lemon here and then it goes out of province to a neighboring province, that term is no longer captured. I think the other significance as well is that over the years we've seen the development of vehicle history reports. Some of you may have heard of CarProof and Carfax. And those reports will pick up, you know, the status of a lemon vehicle as well as other deficiencies with the vehicle.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate the information.
Thank you, and members of the committee, thank you.
So we have Susan McCaskill, Regional Manager of MAD. Susan, welcome back to the House again. It's good to see you. So again, welcome, Susan. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes for presentation, and we'll have time for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be here, members of the Legislative Assembly. I'm representing my colleague, Eric Dumschat, who is our legal counsel and on our public policy team. Eric is not able to be here today. He is in Ontario, but I will present the paper that he has prepared, and copies are being circulated for you. We're responding to the 4 positions with regard to the proposals. Roadside suspension and impoundment reduce impaired driving fatalities and injuries by removing the driver's ability to operate a motor vehicle, as well as providing a strong deterrent because the sanction is immediate. These are proven safety measures, and there is evidence to support their implementations. MAD Canada has long advocated for the use of immediate 7-day administrative license suspension, ALS, and vehicle impoundment for drivers who are above the 0.5% blood alcohol concentration threshold. This 7-day ALS and impoundment should also be extended to drivers who fail an oral fluid test or standardized field sobriety test. An immediate 90-day ALS and 30-day vehicle impoundment should be given to drivers who are above the 0.08 BAC threshold. And on the drug side, 90-day ALS and 30-day vehicle impoundments should be for any driver who has failed a DRE, has a blood THC level of 5 nanograms per ml or more based on an evidentiary blood test, or has a blood THC level of 2.5 nanograms per ml or more based on an evidentiary blood test, and a BAC of 0.05 or more as determined by an approved instrument. These sanctions should be given upon the return of a positive confirmatory blood test in the situations mentioned above. In these cases, the driver should be issued an immediate 7-day roadside suspension and impoundment, which prevents him or her from driving home in the impaired condition. Unfortunately, unlike the results of an approved instrument for alcohol, the results of the required confirmatory blood test take weeks or months to be returned. So as a result, if the confirmatory blood test returns a result at a level of the violation of the previously mentioned offenses, the driver should be located, have his or her license seized, and be given a temporary license for 7 days. After this temporary license has expired, both the 90-day administrative suspension and the 30-day vehicle impoundment should come into effect. The temporary license allows the driver to make arrangements for alternative transportation before the ALS and impoundment come into effect. Immediate ALSs, particularly when combined with vehicle impoundment, have a strong deterrent impact on jurisdictions where they have been used. For example, in 2010, British Columbia implemented a number of traffic safety measures, including a mandatory ALS and vehicle impoundment for drivers with a BAC of above 0.05% and drivers with a BAC above 0.8% for those who fail or refuse to take a breath or a blood test. Between the program's implementation in the late 2010 and 2012, one recent study determined that the changes resulted in 59% decrease in drivers with BACs above 0.08 and a 21% decrease in drivers with a BAC between 0.05 and 0.08. Moreover, alcohol-related injury collisions fell by 23.4%, and property damage only collisions fell by 19.5%. Further, there was an approximate 44% reduction in alcohol-related fatalities between 2010 and 2012, an approximate 38% reduction between 2010 and 2014, saving an estimated 43 lives annually between 2010 and 2015. To put the effectiveness of British Columbia's impoundment regime in perspective, Ontario and Manitoba saw an 11% reduction and 9% increase in alcohol-related traffic fatalities, respectively, during the 2010 and 2012 period, respectively. MAD Canada also wishes to comment on beginning drivers were alcohol and drug-free until 22 years of age, or where there has been 5 years of driving experience, whichever is latter. Driving is a challenge, and these zero-tolerance approaches ensure that driving experience, whichever is the latter, beginner drivers, both young and old, are able to get the necessary experience driving without adding variables provided by alcohol and drugs. Young drivers are overrepresented in crash statistics, and this helps to reduce those numbers. Any action that makes it easier for the police to identify drivers within the graduated licensing program is supported by MAD Canada. MAD Canada has long advocated for enhanced driving provisions for new and young drivers. It is our suggestion that beginning drivers should be subject to zero alcohol and zero cannabis and illicit drug thresholds for the first 5 years of licensed driving or until they reach the age of 22, whichever is longer. This is of particular concern for MAD Canada, as motor vehicle crashes constitute the leading cause of death among 14 to 24-year-old Canadians. And moreover, impairment-related crashes take a disproportionate toll on young people. In 2014, 16 to 25-year-olds made up 13% of the population, but accounted for almost 30% of alcohol-related traffic deaths. Similarly, the percentage of 16 to 19-year-olds fatally injured drivers who tested positive for drugs rose from approximately 26% in 2000 to over 40% in 2012. In terms of public health, youth crash deaths represent a major preventable cause of years of life lost, as those victims die 50 to 60 years prematurely. The zero alcohol and blood drug requirement should apply beyond the GLP until the driver is 22 or has 5 years of licensed driving, whichever is longer. Young drivers, beginning drivers, usually lack both driving experience and experience with drugs. They tend to be risk takers and are less cautious than their older counterparts. Thus, even in the absence of drugs, young drivers are at a greater relative risk of a crash than older, more experienced drivers. While older beginning drivers may have experience with drugs, they, like younger counterparts, lack the driving experience necessary to ensure their safety while driving with a positive, non-criminal BDL. A zero blood drug requirement for non-medical drugs that lasts until the driver is 22 or has 5 years of licensed driving will allow young and older beginner drivers to gain the driving experience necessary to mitigate any impairing effects that are present from a non-criminal BDL. The police do not see everything and must rely to some extent on the public to inform them of impaired drivers. By providing protection to all those who report suspected impaired drivers in good faith, Nova Scotia will increase the likelihood that an impaired driver will be reported and the police will be able to stop him or her before an innocent person is injured. MAG Canada supports the action that would enhance the ability of the public to report suspected impaired drivers. Extending legal protection to individuals who report a suspected impaired driver in good faith eliminates the fear of adverse consequences that may cause an individual to hesitate. The further step to ensure that the registrar is not required to share the report is likewise lauded by MAG Canada, as it will help to minimize the likelihood that family or members of individuals' vulnerability to the impaired driver will be the subject of reprisal. These provisions are in line with MAG Canada's long-standing Campaign 911, which encourages the Canadian public to call 911 and report impaired drivers suspected of driving impaired. Information about this campaign can be found on MAG Canada's website under Programs, Awareness Campaigns, Campaign 911. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCaskill. Ms. Chender.
Thank you very much for your presentation today. I'm just curious, when I look at the act we have in front of us, the wording is a bit different. So you're talking about ALS, and it looks like what we're talking about here is they talk about an impaired suspension or something like that. The wording is different, but can you tell me how this is different from what we see here? Because it looks to me like the peace officer still does have the ability to issue a 7 or 15-day suspension upon finding those blood levels.
So your question is about the terms that are being used?
No, my question is more, do you find this present in the Act before us? Because when I look at the Act, it looks like some of this has already been contemplated.
Yes, our organization has reviewed the Motor Vehicle Act, now the Traffic Safety Act, for every province, and so we've made recommended changes that are already in place in other provinces. So we have, over the years, a program called Rating the Provinces. So it's a design of best case legislation for each province. So the recommendations that we're making in the paper today, it's our endeavor to line those up with what's being proposed to be introduced for the amendments.
Okay. I guess we'll get further into this, I'm sure, as we progress in the bill, but it looks to me like the impairment-related suspensions covered in the Act do already accomplish some of what you're suggesting.
That's already, you mean it's already in existence?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the app.
Yes.
Can you speak to that, whether or not it is already here? Because that's helpful for us in trying to understand how it might need to be changed.
I'm sorry, I can't speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Appreciate your comments, and these will be looked at after. Thank you. Sandra Newton. The page, or our clerk will grab, our council will grab the copies and distribute them. Welcome.
Thank you.
So 10 minutes for presentation. The floor is yours, and then we'll have some time for questions after.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Dear Chair and all members, good morning, Honourable Chairman, committee members, fellow colleagues, and members of the media. I am here on behalf of the IWK Child Safety Link program. Child Safety Link is a maritime-wide child and youth injury prevention program whose goal is to reduce the incidence and severity of unintentional injuries in children and youth. On behalf of the Child Safety Link, I want to offer support to the Traffic Safety Act. Child Safety Link supports replacing the outdated Motor Vehicle Act with a new Traffic Safety Act. Prioritizing safe passage of our most vulnerable populations is important. Children are vulnerable road users regardless of whether they are motor vehicle occupants, pedestrians, or pedal cyclists. On-road incidents place a significant burden of injury on children. In Canada, the leading cause of unintentional injury-related deaths were those caused on the road. In 2012, on-road injuries contributed to nearly 50% of all unintentional injury-related deaths in Canadian children. The youngest occupants of vehicles are some of the most vulnerable road users. Child restraint systems can significantly reduce a child's risk of injury as a result of a motor vehicle collision. We appreciate that the TSA will continue to address the proper use of child restraint systems such as car seats, booster seats, and seatbelts. We know that active transportation as a cyclist or a pedestrian is an important part of a healthy lifestyle and can be a form of recreation as well as a mode of transportation. For children, walking is their primary mode of independent transportation. In order to reduce the risk of serious injury-related death related to active transport, we must create supportive environments for safe active transport and continue to encourage safe behaviors, including wearing appropriate protective equipment such as a helmet while cycling. We want to ensure our roads are safe for all, and we want to encourage our children and youth to be active and safe on our roads. This updated TSA is a positive step in reducing serious injuries in our province. Child Safety Link wants to thank the Nova Scotia Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal for taking action to keep our roadways across the province safe for all, and this updated TSA is a positive step forward. Child Safety Link would like to offer our support to the government and work with you to ensure the regulations related to child passenger safety and active transportation continue to support those most vulnerable. As manager of Child Safety Link, I also look forward to continuing to participate on the Nova Scotia Road Safety Advisory Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Zan.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And just to be clear, so you're happy with the Act as it is then? You're not trying to make any amendments?
At the moment, we have been working with the Nova Scotia Road Safety Advisory Committee, and we were looking at bicycling. We were on a subcommittee to talk about some changes regarding bicycling and pedestrian use, and we know that those have been put forward to change in the Traffic Safety Act. And with child passenger safety, there are several things we're looking for that we will be in discussions with.
In regulations?
In regulations, yeah.
But not in the Act?
No, not in the Act.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? Thank you very much. So we'll look forward to your continued involvement when the regulations are being worked on. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Ben Buchwald and Steve Bedard. We are running a few minutes early. I can jump through the list of everybody's. Kelsey Lane. Is she here? Kelsey? So we'll jump around on the list a little bit. That's okay, Kelsey. You're ready. He can relax and that. So welcome, Kelsey. Kelsey's with the Ecology Action Center. So we have 10 minutes for a presentation and 5 minutes for questions. The floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. Perfect. So thank you for the opportunity to speak at this committee. My name is Kelsey Lane, and I'm the Sustainable Transportation Coordinator for the Ecology Action Center. The Ecology Action Center, along with our partners, have been a member of the Active Transportation Subcommittee of the Road Safety Advisory Committee, and today we would like to discuss Bill 80, the Traffic Safety Act. Since the MVA was passed over 80 years ago, our province has dedicated a significant strategic effort to improving active transportation in Nova Scotia. 21 of our municipalities have active transportation plans. Our province have encouraged more people to walk, bike, or take the bus and reduce greenhouse gas emissions through programs like Connect 2. Our Accessibility Act emphasizes that we need to make our province accessible for all people, no matter how they get around. A paramount goal of modernizing the Motor Vehicle Act was to reduce collisions, injury, and death. In Bill 80, we are thrilled to see Nova Scotia take that first step by including vulnerable road user legislation. This recognizes that people who walk, bike, or use a mobility device on our streets have equal right to mobility, yet face disproportionate amount of risk on our roadways. The legislation increases fines and serves to recognize and protect the most vulnerable of our road users. We would like to sincerely congratulate the province on this initiative. It is certainly something we can all be proud of. In the spirit of protecting vulnerable road users, however, Bill 80 has fallen short in Section 23.4 regarding speed limits. Currently, municipalities have to apply to the Provincial Traffic Authority to ask permission to set speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour. Vision Zero is a principle born out of Sweden which states that there is no amount of death that is acceptable on our streets. The policy recognizes that people using our roads are going to make mistakes, and policies and infrastructure should be in place so that these mistakes do not result in death. In accordance with the Vision Zero principle, local traffic authorities should be empowered to set speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour without permission from the PTA. There are a number of reasons for this. Firstly, lowering speed limits improves drivers' awareness and reaction time. It also reduces the distance a vehicle needs to stop while minimizing the risk that a collision will occur in the first place. Secondly, even a small reduction in speed reduces the severity of an injury in a collision. According to the World Health Organization, the risk of speed for vulnerable road users is clear. Their research shows that a pedestrian who's hit by a car traveling at 30 kilometers an hour has a 90% likelihood of survival. At 40 kilometers an hour, the likelihood of survival drops to 60%. And at 50 kilometers an hour, the likelihood of survival is just 20%. The risk is even greater when a collision involves an elderly person or a child. It is no wonder that speed limits are being reduced across municipalities in Quebec, Ontario, and Alberta. Empowering and encouraging municipalities to set slower speed limits, especially on residential streets, sends the message that the province values the lives of our residents and vulnerable road users. Yet Bill 80 effectively makes it more difficult for municipalities to create safe environments for all. Under Bill 80, yes, municipalities have the ability to apply to the Provincial Traffic Authority to set these lower limits. However, the process is cumbersome and places undue burden on municipalities to apply, fund, and erect signage on streets that could be less than 50 kilometers per hour. Furthermore, Section 23.4 sets a precedent for how roadways are designed. 50-kilometer-hour streets are only suited to car travel if they are shared. The act should enable local traffic authorities to take initiative of safety in their region and should, wherever possible, encourage municipalities to post and therefore design for lower speed limits. As Brent Totterhan says, former chief planner of Vancouver, we cannot judge whether or not we need a bridge by the amount of people swimming across the harbor. We here in Nova Scotia cannot continue to judge whether or not we need lower speed limits based on the amount of vulnerable road users currently using those streets. Provincial leadership in lowering this number will set a clear standard of safety and empower municipalities to create a safer environment for all road users. Our recommendation is this. At a minimum, we should be amending Section 23, subsection 4, to allow local traffic authorities to set speed limits below 50 kilometers per hour. Setting lower speed limits should not be restricted to school zones and parks because we know families begin their commute much before these zones begin. An additional recommendation is to reduce the speed limit in residential areas as identified in Section 102.2 of the Motor Vehicle Act to 30 kilometers per hour. A similar motion was recently approved in the City of Calgary, who voted in favor of lowering default speed limits on all residential streets. We have heard from municipalities across Nova Scotia that lower speed limits are a priority. It may have been the case when the Motor Vehicle Act was created in 1932 that our primary concern was getting cars as quickly as possible from point A to point B. Today, we care about more than that. We care about making our communities accessible. We care about air quality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We care about active transportation. And if we care about our community's safety for all residents, we cannot wait over 80 years to demonstrate in this bill. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak here today, and I look forward to working with the committee in the future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lane. Mr. D'Entremont.
Thank you for your presentation, and you sort of touched a little bit towards the end there. So right now, a municipal traffic authority under Clause 23, Section 5, they list out a couple of other options, right? Mm-hmm. So school areas, parks, or beach areas. What would your suggestion be for the other possibilities close to home? I mean, I see what you're saying. How would you list it out, or just completely take out the below 50 reference?
Exactly. I think as we've seen, the risk of posting higher speed limits is great, and municipalities understand the context of their local streets, and especially those residential streets. And so they should have the authority under this act to be able to post a speed limit below 50 kilometers an hour. Currently, they're restricted to posting 50 to 80 kilometers an hour without permission from the Provincial Traffic Authority. And if they do get that permission, they have to post continually throughout that zone a 30-kilometer-hour speed limit, which we've seen has been a burden on some municipalities. Another remark I would like to make is that even here in the Halifax Regional Municipality, we don't have the infrastructure we need to separate all modes. Think about Lucasville or Sackville, any of these places, especially the suburbs, people are sharing those streets. We have a sidewalk deficit. So people are going to be sharing streets and they need to be able to get around. And in those cases, municipalities should have the ability to make those streets as safe as possible.
Thank you.
Ms. Chender.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Kelsey. I guess I would just start by saying I think we're fully in support of your comments. We introduced a bill earlier this year asking for the same thing that you're asking for in terms of the ability for municipalities to lower speed limits. And I especially appreciate your comment about, the places where we share streets and the sidewalk deficits, because we're involved in this conversation also around the issues with busing and children walking to school and catchment areas. And so it's a real issue. And I also appreciate that even though you're coming at it from active transportation, you're also thinking about not just cyclists, but also walkers and, everyone else who's sharing the road. I guess one question I have is, you mentioned that you've been on this subcommittee involved in this. Mm-hmm. I have to say, from where I sit, I'm mystified that this isn't included in the legislation, and I'm wondering if it came up in your conversations, because I know it's come up in the legislature. It's been in discussion. I haven't heard anyone say they don't think this is a good idea, so I'm wondering if you have any insight from being on that subcommittee, whether there were opposing views and what the issue might be.
Yeah, so the subcommittee hasn't sat for a number of months. I don't actually recall the discussion on speed limits. We were methodically going through what we're now going to be put in the regulation portion of the MVA. So again, I don't recall the discussion on that. But again, it was really unclear on the committee how those comments would be brought forward. We have worked with Paul Arsenault and his team, and he's been very receptive to a lot of the comments, and we understand that some of the very important regulations, especially the infrastructure pieces, will be included again in the regulation portion. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. I can't really comment, as I don't recall we've actually gotten to that on the committee before it was disbanded at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johns.
I'd like to start by saying thank you very much for your presentation. Formerly to my provincial life, I was a municipal councillor with Hrm for 16 years, and certainly echo what you've brought forward was something that numerous transportation committees, as well as when I was chair of Northwest Community Council, we sent to the province numerous times, and was disappointed to see that the municipalities didn't have the ability to do that. So we're certainly supportive of that amendment as well. So if I could, do you actually have copies of your presentation that we could have? Or?
I do, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to working with you.
So is Mr. Ben Buchwald and Steve Bedard here? Sorry for jumping over you. If you want to wait for your counter, come on down. Welcome. Sorry about jumping over you there. You walked in just at the nick, so we're running a little bit ahead of time. Take advantage of that. So we have 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. So my name is Ben Buchwald. I work as the Director of Bikeways and Blue Route Implementation at Bicycle Nova Scotia. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak to the committee about the Traffic Safety Act bill. It's an issue of great importance to Bicycle Nova Scotia. We're a not-for-profit organization that's been operating in this province for 30 years now. And our mandate is to improve conditions for cycling everywhere so that more Nova Scotians of all ages and abilities can enjoy the freedom and practicalities of riding a bicycle. We work with the province on the development of the Blue Route Provincial Cycling Network, And through that work, we've come into contact and formed relationships with many communities across the province and governmental and non-governmental organizations interested in improving conditions for cycling through improvements to infrastructure, policies, and programming. And in fact, we've seen a great deal of advancement in that area. The recognition that our roads and streets are places that are suitable for use for all road users and not simply motor vehicles. So we were very pleased to see that the Motor Vehicle Act was having this opportunity to be reviewed and that new legislation would be coming forward to modernize the Motor Vehicle Act at this time when we're considering the use of our communities, roads and streets in a much different way, and greatly emphasizing the importance of the use of those streets for vulnerable road users. So Bicycle Nova Scotia sits along with the Ecology Action Centre and the Halifax Cycling Coalition on the subcommittee of the Road Safety Advisory Committee of Government for Active Transportation. Kelsey introduced that to this group as well. And through that position, Bicycle Nova Scotia was consulted on the drafting of Bill 80, the Traffic Safety Act. And in our consultation, we put forward 5 key recommendations that we would have liked to see brought into the Act. So I'm just going to go through those 5. We requested that the name of the Act be changed to the Traffic Safety Act, so we can check that box. I think that is progress in recognizing that the Motor Vehicle Act is now something that is for protecting the the rights, responsibilities, and safety of all road users. We made a request that dooring, which is the act of unsafely opening a vehicle door into oncoming traffic, be recognized as a penalty under the Act. We requested that municipal traffic authorities were given permission to set speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour. We requested that definitions be added to the Act for the use of bicycle traffic signals and cross rides, which are currently disallowed under the Motor Vehicle Act. And we requested that the introduction of regulations for safely making right and left turns when cyclists were present be included to avoid right and left hook collisions. And we also requested that increased penalties be put forward under the Act when infractions occur which result in serious harm to vulnerable road users, which would include cyclists and pedestrians. So we were pleased to see some of that appears to be moving forward, and we also understand that most of it may be addressed as regulations are passed under the Act. So rules of the road, we understand, will be developed as part of regulations passed under the Traffic Safety Act if it goes forward. So that can address all of our recommendations, but for one, which is the power for municipal traffic authorities to set speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour. And in fact, that recommendation was, it has been ignored in this bill. And we see that as an important issue for this committee to consider as we move forward. Although we have not been able to conduct a comprehensive analysis of all other legislation in Canada, we do understand that Nova Scotia is among the few provinces that will not be allowing its municipalities to put forward speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour. We also recognize, as Kelsey pointed out, that research into risk exposure to vulnerable road users is greatly reduced at speed limits below 50 kilometers an hour. In fact, I brought with me the same statistic that Kelsey presented from the World Health Organization, which states that at 45 kilometers an hour, pedestrians have a 50% risk of fatality in a collision with a motor vehicle, which is reduced to 90% chance of survival at speed limits at 30 kilometers an hour or less. So for that reason, we think that it's incredibly important that we do not move forward as a province that's seeking to address the rights and the safety of vulnerable road users in Nova Scotia and pass legislation which is intended to modernize our Traffic Safety Act and our regulations, yet at the same time placing Nova Scotia in a position where we are behind the curve of legislative change in Canada. Whereas all other provinces are recognizing that it's important that our regulations and our legislation and our enforcement is in line with the best practices associated with road safety design. Now we also recognize that the design of our infrastructure and our streets is the most important issue affecting the way that they are used. So it is not simply a matter of posting speed limits, which is the requirement to improve safety for vulnerable road users. However, we do not believe that it's reasonable in recognition of the fact that Nova Scotia has many roads and streets where the appropriate driving speed is below 50 kilometers an hour, and that at the same time, we cannot post those speeds as a matter of course for municipalities correctly for the design of those roadways. We also understand that municipalities like the Halifax Regional Municipality are actively seeking to design roadways with an appropriate speed of 30 kilometers an hour for the implementation of local street bikeways and other initiatives that improve the mixing speed of vehicles and vulnerable road users. And again, we believe that it would be much more reasonable for municipalities intimately engaged with those design issues and have the greater familiarity with their communities to be granted the power and the responsibility to set the speed limits accordingly and appropriately. We do not believe that it's reasonable that a road could be posted at 50 kilometers an hour when in fact the safe travel speed along that roadway is less than 30 or less. So I'd like to thank this group for considering my comments today on behalf of Bicycle Nova Scotia. Look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Mr. McGuire.
Thank you for being here today. I just had two quick questions. Can you explain to me what crossroads is?
Certainly, yeah. A crossride is a set of markings that allows a bicycle to travel across an intersection. They're usually used in alongside special traffic signals for the advancement of cyclists through an intersection. Currently, we do not allow cyclists to travel through a crosswalk. And in fact, you know, that gap in our design vocabulary it's something that's holding back a few key projects in Nova Scotia right now. I think most specifically the improvement to the approaches to the McDonald Bridge for the bike lane will require the use of crossrides and traffic signalization.
So my last question is how do we address community? So I look at my community, for example, so the Sambro Loop, for example, I'm sure you've cycled it. In some sections has 80 kilometers an hour. We have put, at the end of the month, we'll have 40 kilometers of active transportation trails, or lanes, sorry, along Old Sambro and Ketch Harbor Road, but there's still an issue of 80 kilometers an hour. These are considered quasi-residential areas, if you know what I mean. Like they don't have the densely populated suburbs, but they are definitely communities where there's a lot of individuals living there. So how do you address that? Because that would not be a 30 kilometer an hour road. It's always been 80, but it's also one of the most cycled areas in all of HRM.
Right. Well, I think that those types of situations, you know, you'd have to look specifically at the local community and the context for a treatment that would be the most appropriate. I do think that's a position that a lot of smaller communities and rural areas are facing across Nova Scotia, where their main street is effectively a highway. Mm-hmm. I believe that a design treatment that would reduce that speed limit could certainly be considered. If it's not possible to reduce the speed of vehicles traveling along that roadway, I think it may be more appropriate to consider a separated facility like a sidewalk or a multi-use pathway. That's another issue entirely, where we have the municipal service agreement that doesn't have the province developing sidewalks for municipalities. I think that's beyond this conversation. But my recommendation would be that if the speed limit or the speed cannot reasonably be lowered, that some kind of separate facility would be developed for that area.
So I just want to make clear what you're trying to say. I was at a presentation a while back at down at the waterfront, and in BC in particular, they have separated lanes, which still allows for the traffic to flow at 50 kilometers an hour, because the pedestrian and the cyclists are separate from the road. Is that what you're talking about? So in these more rural areas where you're right, it's effectively Ketch Harbor Road, and Old Sambro Road is effectively a highway.
Yeah. Well, I think what we would say is that any separation that you can provide is an improvement. So the addition of a paved shoulder is an improvement to the safety of those users. But a paved shoulder environment might not be comfortable or as secure for everybody in that community. So where feasible, I think the design of a separated separated piece of infrastructure that affords some physical separation and protection would be worth considering. We certainly understand that the feasibility of developing certain types of infrastructure province-wide is a major challenge for communities and the government, and that those decisions, it's important to consider, usage potential related to the general kind of land use constraints associated. But nonetheless, yeah, I think that would be my answer, is that to seek to provide as much protection as is possible and feasible for the area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gender.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'll ask the same question I asked Kelsey, which is, as you pointed out, the biggie here that can't get dealt with in regulation is this ability for municipalities to lower speed limits. And it's helpful for you to bring in this example, and we see it here in the HRM, of more and more kind of innovative street design slowly catching up with us so that we can start to design more community-friendly ways of moving through. And as you point out, a lot of those roadways, 50 kilometers an hour is not safe. I mean, I have had lots of experience, and it's a big constituency issue for me, the speed that people regularly travel down community roadways. What argument have you heard, or what conversation have you had against the idea of giving this power to municipalities?
Yeah, certainly. The argument that I've heard against is related to the fact that road design is the critical issue associated with managing speed rather than posting. And so theoretically, there is a concern that people may post speed limits at lower speeds than is really appropriate for that road. However, it doesn't seem like a reasonable solution to that concern is to post speed limits that are higher for the appropriate use of that roadway.
That's right.
And that better education, which is certainly available in terms of our understanding of road engineering and design right now, be provided to the municipal traffic authorities that have been granted the power to manage these streets as they see as the safest way for their community. So I think we're cautioning, we're kind of, the argument is basically that this power may be used inappropriately. But I think that speaks to a greater road safety issue in which we have communities calling out for safer roadways, and that should be the concern that this government addresses, while giving municipalities all the tools they can provide through legislation to make those roads safer.
Thanks. Yeah, and just as a follow-up, or maybe to put a slightly finer point on it, it may or may not be effective to post a 30-kilometer speed limit on a road that people are normally traveling. I mean, I lived on a road that was in the middle of a very steep hill. My former neighbor is sitting in the gallery here waiting to present to us, where, cars would regularly roll over. They ran into, there was a vehicle that ran into the side of our home once. If we put up a 30-kilometer speed limit there, it probably won't work, but it's not going to harm anybody.
No.
And perhaps, that starts the conversation that moves towards agitating for better road design. Would you agree?
I agree, and it's my personal belief that the speed limits associated with legislation do have an impact on roadway design. If we understand that our Motor Vehicle Act sets a blanket speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour minimum across the province, then you would expect that would affect development patterns in the way that our roads are designed in one way or another. And certainly I do agree. I can't see the harm in a speed limit posted at 30 kilometers an hour. And I do see the harm in situations where you have cars traveling at speeds that are not appropriate for the road. I live on one myself, on Clifton Street, and in general, this is just anecdotal, people travel that street very slowly. The odd person who doesn't is a real hazard to my 3-year-old daughter, and it scares me to see that when somebody's driving 50 kilometers on that road. That leaves law enforcement with no recourse, though, currently. And I think drivers have the expectation that if they feel comfortable driving 50, it's within their right to do so, even if it's not appropriate on that roadway. So it is a concern, and I do hope that Nova Scotia doesn't miss this opportunity, because I think it is an important point to recognize that other provinces have already figured this out and that they're not moving forward in this direction.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much, Mr. Buchwald. Appreciate your comments very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Victor Olton and Henry Vissers. Welcome. I think twice we've had Mr. Vissers here. To all amendments, it's good to see you again, sir. Little different topic this time. So, you know the process. We have 10 minutes for presentations and 5 minutes for questions, and the floor is yours.
Victor said it's my turn this time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present today. I'll give a little bit of a history of the Federation for those that still haven't heard. Federation of Agriculture was established in 1895 and since then has been representing the farm community on general farm issues within the province, on policy and advocacy and other things. So we're happy to be meeting with you again today and to be discussing today the Traffic Safety Act. So farmers require the use of the roads for a lot of different aspects of farming. Not only for goods transported on the roadway, but farm trucks, tractors, and machinery that move from field to farm on the roadways. Current legislation under the Motor Vehicle Act is, of course, as you know, not up to date with changing industry trends, size and design of equipment, and all those sorts of things. For example, self-propelled implements of husbandry are not written into legislation. So that would be equipment like combines, teleloaders, things like that. It's just not there because it didn't exist at the time the Act was created. Other challenges with current legislation are around officers' familiarity, farmer exemptions under the Motor Vehicle Act and associated regulations. Much like other elements of regulatory burden and red tape, service delivery of provincial programs such as farm plating is inconsistent across the province, and it is our hope that as the regulations are rolled out for this act, that some of those things will be changed. In spring of 2018, of course, the Department of Transportation Infrastructure Renew opened the consultation on the Traffic Safety Act, and areas to be addressed under the Act included farm vehicles and farm equipment, use of the roads, licensing, permitting processes, and administration. New regulations that are going to be developed as a part of the creation of the Act, and we see these changes as an opportunity to improve the red tape relates to farm transportation. And as I mentioned, we've worked with staff from Service Nova Scotia and TIR over the past number of years on workarounds that allow farmers to meet the regulations as they exist, but there's lots of opportunity to improve and streamline that. So after reviewing Bill 80, the Federation is pleased to see the farm equipment operators are listed as vulnerable road users. We look forward to participating in the consultations around farm equipment operators and the associated regulations. I'm just going to mention some of the highlights that we'd like to see in the transportation regulations include. Updated transportation legislation needs to have a strong agriculture component which does not limit farm equipment access to public highways. Farmers use different types of vehicles to do work on the farm. For example, farmers will often use ATVs, utility vehicles when checking fields. Utility vehicles are lighter than tractors and trucks, therefore soil compaction is reduced. In order to travel from one field to the next, the UTV needs to be insured and thus plated in order to cross the roadways. Most UTVs farmers are using will be equipped with what's called a road kit. There's also a non-expiry plating system that's available for farm tractors and farm equipment that could easily be adopted for UTVs under those same regulations. Other components we're looking for are to have regulations that have a definition for self-propelled implements of husbandry and our expanded definition of a farm tractor. As mentioned, the equipment has changed a lot over the last number of years, and legislation and regulation hasn't kept up with that. Federation also suggests that further legislation through regulations facilitate a practical approach to transporting farm equipment and products on Nova Scotia's roadways, including the following. That Nova Scotia incorporate TSA or ensuring regulation, permission and regulation around speed indicator symbols. You'd like to also recommend that agriculture has a clear exemption to commercial vehicle drivers regulation and exemptions to reporting hours of service. We consider that unnecessarily burdensome for farm that's usually operating within a fairly small radius of their own farm. Farm tractors are permitted to haul no more than 2 implements of husbandry, with the farm implement of husbandry being exempt from the trailer definition in the Traffic Safety Act. This recommendation can now easily be applied. Federation also recommends that if a slow-moving vehicle sign is in use, there is no need for endorsement 23 or the Class 8 endorsement on licenses related to hauling farm implements. And that endorsement 23, of course, was created as a workaround reviewing the regulations. As I mentioned earlier, there's a farm plate registry in place. Federation recommends that farmer be better defined as the authorized person representing the farm business as duly registered under the farm registration regulation. Federation would also recommend that the FM plate regulation be broadened to inclusive of all farmers and be linked to the farm registration system for verification. That's another thing that got left behind in changes to our organization and to the legislation, in that farm registration is not mentioned in the current regs. Considering the unique nature of agriculture's use of roadways, Federation recommends that development of specific regulations that encompass all agriculture-related traffic regulations and exceptions be developed. So we feel that it's an important time to be able to carve out a part of that regulation so that it deals specifically with the farm community. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and Victor and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Mr. McKay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is fairly simple, I think, just an explanation of what is a road kit?
A road kit is simply on those side-by-side utility vehicles. There's a kit that you can order when you purchase it that makes it ready for the road as far as suspension and safety and things like that. Roll bar protection, all that.
Okay, thank you. My second question is in regard to farm plating. You say that it's inconsistent across the province. I was wondering if you could give me some examples of the sorts of inconsistencies that should be tightened up.
Well, I did mention the teller loader at the beginning, and under the Act, it's not possible to put a farm plate on those. Forklifts would be the same. They don't move a lot on roads, of course, but some farms are on both sides of the road and have to cross the road, things like that. I don't know if you have other examples there, Victor.
That would basically be the same for most any of them. Just those different types of equipment that weren't in regulations before.
Okay, perhaps I misunderstood the comment then as inconsistent across the province, meaning what is done in Cape Breton might be different than what is done in the Annapolis Valley, but it's related more to the equipment itself, to farming equipment.
Yeah, it's farming.
Mr. Vissers.
It's farming equipment, but it's also the interpretation when it comes to the Access Nova Scotia office. There isn't always, the answer to the question isn't always the same for one farm as is another farm. So that's an issue as well.
Great.
So, and that's a matter of if the Act is renewed and clear, then hopefully staff at the offices will be able to interpret the things the same.
Okay, thank you for that.
Ms. Zan.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you guys again. I was going to say, so most of these recommendations that you're making, you'd like to see in the regulations then? So nothing in here that you're suggesting you would like to have amended to the bill to be right in the bill?
No, we're not. We're in support of the bill as it's written. We simply want to make sure that as regulations are developed that we're consulted, and we believe that we will be, and that some of the things we requested are included in those regulations.
Great. Thank you very much.
No further questions. Thank you both very much for your information in your letter today. I believe the next speaker, I don't believe, Geordie Morgan. I haven't seen, pardon? Colin Mays. I understand there's been a sighting. Good stuff. Mr. Mays. May. Mr. May, welcome. Welcome to the law amendments. You have 10 minutes for presentation. I see you're passing one around, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the Law Amendments Committee, thank you for allowing me the time to present my concern regarding one particular aspect of Bill 80. First of all, I would like to refer to Section 60 of the Hrm Charter. Section 60 was introduced and passed in 2008 and refers to the use of the Dartmouth Common. My wife and I live within 100 yards of the entrance to the public cemetery on Dartmouth Common. Section 60 was passed as part of an agreement to allow the construction of the Metro Transit Terminal stretching from Nantucket Avenue to Thistle Street. In exchange for the approval of the construction, the province established the boundaries of the Common and restricted further encroachment on the Common. Section 60 of the Hrm Charter includes the following. The municipality's activities, including planning, development and activities pursuant to this section on the Dartmouth Common and any activities permitted by the municipality on the Common must be consistent with the following objectives: public access, access for all. And then the one I'm really interested in is subsection C, pedestrian priority. And I emphasize the word priority. Safe and comfortable pedestrian circulation. Unfortunately, HRM has never erected any signs setting out the use of the Common. In the bill before you, I notice Clause 45, which enables the council of a municipality to make bylaws. And the part that concerns me is Section 45(1)(f) at the bottom of the page, which allows them to regulating the use of bicycles, personal transporters, etc., owned or maintained by the municipality on trails or in other public areas in the municipality that are not public highways. My concern here is that I'm looking for assurance that this bill does not override Section 60 of the Charter and does not override my right as a pedestrian to have priority on the walkways in the Common. Cyclists have been passing through the Common over the past 8 years and almost never use a bell, give no warning to pedestrians and care little for pedestrians no matter their age or disabilities. I've actually seen a mother and grandmother snatch a 2-year-old off the paved walkway because a cyclist dressed as though he was Lance Armstrong was racing along. And I know from other people who walk in the Common the difficulties they've had as pedestrians with cyclists who seem to think that, well, a bell doesn't matter. In the summer of 2017, I experienced problems with cyclists who had no bell or did not use a bell when approaching me and other pedestrians from behind. At that time, I was required to exercise and walk as much as possible to ensure my rehabilitation for hip replacement surgery. My hip replacement was required after falling when dismounting from a bicycle in Pemberton, British Columbia. Kind of ironic, isn't it? The accident required 3 ambulance journeys and ended in Lionsgate Hospital, North Vancouver. Surgery was delayed for more than 40 hours due to complications, and further post-surgery complications resulted in a hospital stay of 12 days. Without the great care from specialist nurses and support staff, I would not be speaking to you today. Upon our delayed return to Nova Scotia, I ensured that I performed my exercises and walked the neighbourhood and the pathways in Dartmouth Common. Unfortunately, on at least 6 occasions, cyclists almost collided with me, and I had no warning of their approach. I was left shaken, angry, and of course, transported back to the day of the accident. Naturally, my greatest fear was and remains of a collision and further injury. There are many other pedestrians of all ages and abilities who have had negative experiences with commuters on bicyclists, and I would say that 99% of them are well-educated males. And one went so far as to produce a series of signs on the back of a recycled NDP election sign. This is the photograph. That was posted to Twitter by some upset cyclist. In fact, I believe a police officer called me that morning. "Colin, did you put that sign up?" And I said, "No, but I saw them." And there were 3 amusing signs, and they were posted up there. Now, this led to quite a discussion on Twitter, and I'm pleased to say I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Facebook, and our phone number's not in the book. One person even suggested, after this, one person suggested that I be punched in the throat. The gentleman's rather partial to whiskey and posted his comment at 11:28 p.m, so I think we can deduce what was happening there. So I would like your assurance that Bill 80 will not take precedence over Section 60 of the Charter, and I would point out that any bylaws that HRM passes, that unlike the legislature, they don't allow people to appear and speak. You have to write your letter. And 2 weeks ago, I was up at a talk at Dalhousie on FOI, and walking back towards the ferry, I noticed all the bike racks at Dal, so I thought, well, I'll count the bikes with bells, and I'll count the bikes without bells. 48 bicycles and only 13 had a bell. And a mother with a 4-year-old mentioned to me last week that she was walking by the house and she was beside herself. And she happens to be a cyclist, and she mentioned that a cyclist that came roaring by and almost hit her child. And she started yelling at him about, slow down, slow down. And he went like this, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you," because he had his buds in his ears. So other than that, I think the bill's good. I just like to have somewhere where I can walk where there are no cyclists, because if we start getting to have them on the sidewalks, I'm not too happy with that. But other than that, I think it's a good bill. And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. May. Ms. Chender.
Mr. May, thank you for joining us today. I know those paths well. I saw you on your walks. I think you ought to count your wife among the people to whom you're thankful for that, recovering from that injury, because I saw her walking with you. I guess my question is, Colin, what recycled NDP signs aside, I don't know whose sign that was. I'm just saying, it seems like some partial solution to what you're talking about might be signage, but beyond that, what would you like us to do to accomplish what you're asking for?
It's more of what I would like HRM to have done. This section about allowing them on trails. I know that Mr. Bookwell and Ken Kelsey know from meetings of the Active Transportation Committee at HRM that there are problems with cyclists on trails throughout the municipality. The cyclists talk about it themselves. You can talk to councillors. They don't talk about it publicly, but if you approach them privately, they will. So somehow, I don't know how you get around it. They're a very vocal lobby, and they want to be able to ride virtually everywhere. And I cycled when I was young, and I cycled when I was over, and I never thought of going on a sidewalk. I never thought of going on a trail. I always cycled in the road, but there's no way that I would cycle in Canada. Not today. It's just, I don't think it's safe at all. And as for this section, I don't think the cyclists should be on any and all trails. There is a silent number of people out there, and I've heard from them, and I've heard from councillors, and a lot of people, some people think that it's only me that's going on about the cyclists in the Commons, but if you walk through the Commons and people will talk to you about the issue, and I tried through my councillor to find a solution to this, and all I got was, well, maybe we'll put a tent up with the Cycling Coalition and give away bells. And I thought, well, if you're riding an $800 bike, surely to God you can afford a $5 bell. And eventually I gave up going the political route to try and get a solution, and I went to the staff. And I went to the director of parks, and he said, yes, they'd get right on it. So I'm waiting.
Okay.
3 months counting. Other than that, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
We have one other, Ms. Di Costanza.
Cyclist, and I cycle within the city, and I go on the Commons as well, but I slow right down as soon as I see a pedestrian, and a lot of cyclists that I see on that common do exactly what I do. The pedestrian always has the right, and if I see anybody, we slow right down, as slow as the walkers, if not. And most of the time, I don't use my bell, and I have a bell, because even the bell to me is something that is upsetting to people. So 90% of a lot of the cyclists that I see, they slow right down, in fact, walk with them. And I cross the side, the crossroad, I get off my bike and I cross them. But when there is clear, then I cycle. And we've never cycled fast. You cycle fast when you're on the road. But if you're a cyclist on the paths, you're always slow, or leisure cyclist that I've seen, and I've been doing it. And I cycle from Clayton Park to downtown, go have my coffee at the market, and cycle back up. And I don't see a lot of that, but maybe that is something I need to be more conscious of. But I see a lot of cyclists who obey and give priority to the pedestrians. I just wanted to say that.
The difference being that the Dartmouth Common has legislation which specifically sets out what I described. There is no specific reference in the Hrm Charter to the Halifax Common. None. No. And so pedestrian priority in public parks applies. In Halifax, it only ever applies to public gardens, because you can't jog through public gardens, you can't cycle, you can't walk a bike, you can't walk on the grass. And plus they have a commissioner there to make sure you can. But to emphasise that in Dartmouth, on the Common, pedestrians have priority.
Thank you, Mr. May.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments on that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Is Jordy Morgan here yet? No. How about Amanda Dean? No. With the permission of the committee, could I ask that we go to Bill 79 and have that, is there a motion? Is there any discussion on Bill 79? Is there a motion? Mr. Jessup.
I move that Bill 79, the Motor Vehicle Act amended, be reverted, or what's the word?
Sent back to the House.
Be referred back to the House without amendment. Thank you, folks.
There's a motion on the floor to refer Bill 79 to the House. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. So I believe what we'll do is maybe take a 5-minute recess unless there's any other business. No? We'll recess till the witnesses come. Please, if everybody could stay close. Thank you. Order. Thank you, everybody, for the quick recess there. So we'll resume sitting law amendments on Bill 80, the Traffic Safety Act. And at this point in time, I'd like to call Mr. Geordie Morgan, Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, to the table. Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I want to thank the Minister and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak on this act. And I would, of course, like to begin by commending all of the parties and all of the parties in the House I'm speaking of, and stakeholders in the community who I see are well represented here today. And also a special note to the folks at Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal who have worked very hard for a long time on this piece of legislation. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business, who I represent the interests of 5,200 small and medium-sized businesses across Nova Scotia in all sectors of the economy. And of all of the challenges small business face, government red tape is consistently leading the way as an irritant or a barrier to growth, and its roots can be found in the myriad of regulations adopted over the years by successive governments. So the Nova Scotia Motor Vehicle Act is kind of a case study in how modernizing regulation can make life better for both business and government. As we all know, it was adopted in the early part of the last century when Halifax had streetcars and Model A's interacting with horses. And then the Act, as we heard in the House with the speech from the Minister, was amended 49 times over the years. So it's not hard to see how amending an antiquated framework to keep up with modern transportation needs would present its challenges. People become frustrated with governments because seemingly simple actions can often become lengthy, convoluted processes, and it's tempting to put this at the feet of public servants. However, they're often handcuffed by confusing, contradictory, poorly aligned rules and compliance requirements. And regardless of the efficiency of the workers or better technology, as with the Motor Vehicle Act, there does come a time when you need to stop fixing the jalopy with baling wire and duct tape and get a new car. And the process of getting the Act has been painfully slow. 3 successive governments over 10 years have worked to push this through, and finally the legislation, we hope, will make its way through Province House in this session. And what it means is a fresh opportunity to develop modern regulations to achieve current policy objectives. So today my intent is to represent the interests of small business, and the case has been made for the need for the new Act, but where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, is how it's implemented through regulation. So I really only have one area of focus here, and that's more on the road ahead, if you will, rather than the huge body of work that's already been completed. And I also want to again encourage this government to continue to uphold its own policy on regulation in the application of this legislation. We all know that regulation is necessary in any society. It provides the framework for social action in conducting business. And business is well served by a clear and robust regulatory environment. However, when regulation is excessively burdensome in time, cost, or complexity, it becomes a drag on the economy. And we have seen this in past automobile registration and licensing paperwork and the time and money that it costs businesses to be in compliance. So we're very pleased to note that the government has heard automobile dealers on this issue and has adjusted its approach with this Act. CFIB voiced strong support in the current government's Regulatory Accountability and Reporting Act, which established and provided authority for the Premier's Charter of Governing Principles for Regulation. And because there has been alignment on the intent of this effort, mirror legislation was provided in the 4 Atlantic provinces. And we've given ample credit to the Premier of Nova Scotia, who has spearheaded this effort, gaining support from his counterparts throughout the region. In fact, CFIB has gone so far to actually present awards to Nova Scotia's Chief Regulatory Officer and his staff at the Office of Regulatory Affairs and Service Effectiveness for the work they've done in this area. CFIB is supportive because we believe Nova Scotia and all of the Atlantic provinces could create a better climate for small business if it follows through on those principles. And I just wanted to take some time to remind the committee of the principles that are articulated in the Charter. The preamble says that regulations can distort markets, unduly burden citizens, businesses, and governments, and impede economic growth. And given this, regulation should never be an instrument of first resort and should be deployed only when necessary and only when there is clearly no better policy option available. It goes on in its statement of intent on regulation. The Charter says the government will regulate to achieve its policy objectives only having demonstrated that satisfactory outcomes can't be achieved by alternative self-regulatory or non-regulatory approaches, and where analysis of the cost and benefits demonstrates that the regulatory approach is superior by a clear margin to alternative self-regulatory or non-regulatory approaches. Where the regulation and the enforcement framework can be implemented in a fashion which is demonstrably proportionate, accountable, consistent, accessible, targeted, and predictable. And there is a general presumption that regulation should not impose costs and obligations on business, social enterprises, individuals, and community groups unless a robust and compelling case has been made to do so. It's also our opinion the Charter got it right in stating when regulation is being considered that a full range of regulatory and non-regulatory instruments and options must be identified. For example, do nothing, educate, improve information sharing, use the market, use financial or other incentives, self-regulate, or perhaps use voluntary codes of practice. And it goes on to say that regulation is shown to be clearly and demonstrably superior to other alternatives, and other alternatives are shown not to be effective in achieving a satisfactory outcome, and assessment of alternatives is based on the best available evidence. All of this is contained in the Charter, and I know I am quoting it, chapter and verse, if you will, but my purposes today is to reinforce some of these things, and I'll just go off my script a little bit to wrap on this, because we've seen some great success within government on this, and we believe that much of the impetus for the Motor Vehicle Act actually making its way through at this point is because of the work that the government has done and what it's done around regulation in general. And what we are hoping is now that this act goes through and everybody is busy with the regulatory process, that they'll make sure that they take a look at the Charter and the work that has been done and how it's going to impact businesses specifically. I think that the intent of this is to obviously assist citizens in understanding the implications of the Motor Vehicle Act in the 21st century, but at the same time, businesses are going to be impacted by this. So in consideration of the regulatory process, which very often doesn't happen in the light of day, it happens within government itself, that we hope that the principles that are put in place and that the people who are responsible for putting this administration in place will take the time to be thoughtful and careful to ensure that the interests of small business and all citizens of Nova Scotia are met. And that will conclude my comments.
Thank you very much. Ms. Zan.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming in today, Mr. Morgan. I just wanted to say, for one thing, so do you agree with this bill as it stands? Have you had a chance to actually look through it? It's quite a long one. And is there anything that you wanted to see changed in it or that you are concerned about at this particular point in time?
Through the chair, I have had an opportunity to be briefed on the bill in some degree because we have, as an organization, wanted to ensure that we were upfront in providing some consultation and input on this from the point of view of small business owners. From our perspective right now, we're very pleased to see that there is enough flexibility within the legislation to create a more effective and efficient regulatory environment. So there's nothing particular within the bill that we would, sends off any alarms. But again, the devil is in the details. And sorry for the pun, but with the rubber meets the road, it's where how the regulations are enacted that will really determine the interaction between small business and government on this. And we're hoping that that is something that is understood, taken into consideration, that the costs of any regulation are clearly articulated, and if there's an opportunity, as per the Charter, that offsets are made available for small business on any regulatory compliance requirements.
Right. So I would imagine you would want to be consulted on those as it goes forward.
As I understand it, there's a consultation process that is going to take place, and of course, I think every small business owner in the province, as this act, affects them, would like to have some input on this.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Always good to hear from you and from CFIB. I'm wondering, when you say that this is a great case study for government, are there any particular sectors that CFIB feels that the government should also be examining? Maybe limited to a couple.
Mr. Chair, we feel that this is a tremendous opportunity to see how a modern regulatory framework put through a small business lens will impact us both economically and from the regulatory perspective. I could, walk this back to a variety of departments and say that there are acts that currently exist that could be put through the same lens or in the same kind of a crucible. We understand this has taken 10 years to put together, so it's not easy, but anything that's worth doing generally is not easy. Most things that are worth doing and should be done are hard. And this has been hard, and it'll continue to be a lot of work. I mean, we have a Workers' Compensation Act in this province that was basically created around the same time that the previous Motor Vehicle Act was created. And the Workers' Compensation Board is hobbled by the same kind of Gordian knot of rules and regulations that have been created over the last 100 years or so. I don't think that it's beyond the realm of possibility that the same kind of thinking that we've seen with this could be something that could be applied to workers' compensation. We're living in a different environment now than we used to be. I mean, there's the Environment Act, natural resources. We've seen a review on forestry. Regulatory modernization is important. And I think for this reason, a lot of people think, well, okay, it's business complaining about red tape. But the amount of work that CFIB has done on this, because we have done an enormous amount of work on regulatory reform and regulatory modernization, is that improvement in a government efficiency doesn't just happen at the front end. It doesn't just happen with the delivery of government services to citizens or to business. Improvement of government delivery of services happens with going back and making sure that the regulatory framework and the regulations that accompany it are actually made efficient so that the people who are delivering it have a clear understanding of the policy objectives and how you get there. So this is about as much of improving the machinery of government as it is about service delivery. And as we go forward, I think it's going to be more important when governments are asked to do the same or more with less, that we look at these regulatory frameworks and say, how do we improve them so the people within government can do it more effectively and more efficiently with less frustration. It's better for people in government, and it's better for people being served by government.
Thank you. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much for your presentation, as usual.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Amanda Dean. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for coming in a little bit early. Appreciate that on our schedule. We're a little bit ahead of time here, but so 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions. And that should work quite well, it seems to, for everybody. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak here this morning. My name is Amanda Dean, and I am Vice President Atlantic with Insurance Bureau of Canada. The development of the Traffic Safety Act from the Motor Vehicle Act is a huge piece of work with far-reaching impact. The extent of stakeholder consultation on the TSA certainly speaks to that point. I have personally been involved in conversations off and on since at least 2012 on the TSA, though it was not given that title at that time. The TSA provides a substantial legislative framework where solid regulations can be drafted so that nimble changes can be made in order to keep up with consumer preferences and technological advances, all with a view to keeping roads safe for all users. Essentially, this act takes something that was quite cumbersome by the virtue of its many amendments and ensures that government will be able to respond to the needs of the future. My remarks will be brief, but I would like to speak to two parts of the Act in particular. Autonomous vehicles. We know that there are already vehicles with autonomous features on Nova Scotian highways. In the coming years, this will only increase as the technology becomes more accessible. The manner in which the TSA addresses the reality of autonomous vehicles on the roadway is a good start. The proposed legislative framework appears to provide a flexible approach for the future regulation of autonomous vehicles, and we are optimistic that the future regulations to be made under the Act, in combination with future changes to other relevant legislation, will provide a comprehensive and responsive legal framework for the use and ownership of autonomous vehicles in the province. This type of updated legislation is needed to ensure that Canadians injured in collisions caused by automated vehicles receive timely compensation. We applaud the Nova Scotia government in leading the way by being the first jurisdiction in Canada to include autonomous vehicles in the provincial legislation. Also, the distracted driving changes. We are all doing more and more with our handheld devices. However, behind the wheel is not the time. It's no shock that using a handheld device increases distractions and the opportunity for collisions. The TSA expanded to include all handheld devices, bringing clarity to what constitutes distracted driving. In other words, if you have a device in your hand, you are distracted, no matter if that is a smartphone, GPS, or any other type of entertainment device. No matter what you drive, whether it be a car or a bicycle, there are many distractions to road users today. This update brings clarity and will work to ensure the roads are safe for all road users. There has certainly been a tremendous amount of work done to get to this point. As a partner in road safety, IBC appreciated the opportunity to provide input early on in this process. There is also a tremendous amount of work left to do, and we look forward to being helpful in providing whatever information that we can to assist in the development of regulations that will bring the Traffic Safety Act to life. Once again, thank you very much for being able to speak on this bill.
Thank you. Could we have a copy of your notes also, please, to be
Absolutely.
circulated?
Sure.
Questions? Well, everybody's in agreement. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Thank you very much.
So with that, that concludes our presentations that we have for law amendments. Ms. Chender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move an amendment. It's LAC NDP-1. And it will be by now familiar to the members of the committee because we heard it repeatedly today. We heard it from the Ecology Action Centre, from Bicycle Nova Scotia, from this submission from the Crosswalk Safety Society, from individual submissions. We've discussed it in the legislature. I personally, and on behalf of my caucus, we introduced legislation to this effect. We are somewhat mystified that municipalities should not have the ability to lower speed limits. We're talking about safety, we're talking about common sense. I can't for the life of me find a deleterious effect to allowing municipalities to lower speed limits where they ought to be lower because of the design of the road or for the safety of people living in that community. There are all kinds of ways to move on that particular one, but in the effort to bring along all of our colleagues here, we've chosen a very simple one, which you'll see here on LAC NDP-1. So the amendment that we're moving is on page 19, subclause 23, sub 4, line 2, to delete 50 and substitute 30. Page 19, subclause 23, sub 5, line 2, delete 50 and substitute 30. So instead of saying municipalities may set speed limits between 50 and 80 kilometers, we're just saying they may set speed limits between 30 and 80 kilometers. So we're not removing any powers. I don't think we're doing anything that negatively impacts the ability of TIR to look at our roads. We assume that TIR will have good working relationships with all the municipal traffic authorities. And we know, to the point that Mr. Morgan was making earlier, that there are very onerous and cumbersome challenges to the process of municipalities trying to get permission to lower speed limits. So here we're saying let's remove that barrier and make our roads safer. So I'd like to move that amendment.
Thank you. Any for Mr. Johns?
Yeah, we would be in favor of that amendment. I think that you know, from a personal perspective, in my 16 years on council, I always found it was interesting. I never received any complaints about the 100 series highways and speeds, but daily I receive calls from residents in regards to residential neighborhoods and speeds. And I think that you know, this the amendment that's before us is certainly something that the Halifax Regional Municipality, when I was on council, was looking for numerous times. I think that you know, as elected and responsible form of government, municipalities are able to be trusted with this kind of thing. It's not an unrealistic amendment that's before us. And I certainly speak that municipalities, I would think, would know would know what's the best for their neighborhoods and their residents. I'd also suggest that under the MGA Act, I know that municipalities across the province have to have a traffic authority. Typically, those authorities follow Canadian standards and best practices. Sometimes that authority is council, a CAO, a police chief, or a traffic authority that's appointed. But in any case, they do have to have a traffic authority who would administer this. So I don't think there would be a whole lot of abuse in this case, so I do support that. I also want to point out, and this is more so from a Halifax Regional Municipality perspective, currently, and particularly in suburban and rural areas of the HRM, there is a bit of a challenge, an economic challenge, to be able to provide concrete curb, sidewalk, gutter, stormwater, and all the things that are required under HRM to be able to put in sidewalks are sometimes cost prohibitive. So amendments such as this would provide the particularly HRM, the municipality, with additional tools in addition to design and policing that they would be able to utilize as well for traffic enforcement. And on traffic enforcement, although I don't know if there would be any police officers who would go on record, I have been told numerous times by numerous police officers that they're sometimes hesitant to issue a ticket in a 50-kilometer zone unless, which traditionally would be a residential zone, unless somebody's going at least 10 kilometers over the posted limit. And usually they'll only give out a warning, because they don't want to see the when they take the fine to court that it's bounced or contested. So they usually will ensure that they have about 10 kilometers over what the posted limit is. So I think that providing municipalities with the opportunity to go to a 30-kilometer or a 40-kilometer zone would also encourage tickets to be enforced and given as well. Finally, as the mover suggested, I find it interesting that two of the presenters, both who came with good statistics and review, both are speaking in favor of reducing from a 50 as well as minimum posted, so we would support it for that as well. I would say that I do feel that it's important to provide consistency for enforcement across the province, and I don't feel that the amendment that's before us would burden municipalities who couldn't achieve it because they don't afford to have a traffic engineer on their own and they have to rely on the province for that. I don't think that the amendments here would be onerous on those municipalities. So based on those comments, we would certainly support the motion.
Mr. McGuire.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for speaking here today and all the stakeholders in the department for the extensive consultation and work that they've done on this bill. It's an extremely important bill. And this bill, what we're voting on today, obviously, is not the entire regulations. As we've heard from many of the presenters, there's going to be lots of room for consultation. There's going to be changes along the way. This is basically the bones of the process to get us started and continue to move us forward. There is a process in place that allows councils to change speed limits. It's one that they've used for quite a while, and I'm just learning today that the member from Sackville-Cobequid was on City Council, so I know he's aware of that process. Oh, Sackville-Beaverbank, sorry. And we've seen it work effectively, not just with speed limits, but also with crosswalks in communities. And I can give you a good example of that. A crosswalk at the end of Northwest Arm Drive and Old Samborough Road. There was input from the community, and they thought that it would be a great place for a crosswalk, especially with the park there. Within a couple of weeks, the construction of a crosswalk began. So HRM brought out their engineers, they did a traffic control study, and they went from there. So there is a process in place, and if changes need to be made, like we heard from all the presenters here today, there's an opportunity, and there will be an opportunity going forward to put regulations and policies in place. We are by no means saying no. What we're saying is let the process play out, let the stakeholders get together on these committees, and if changes and regulation changes need to be made, we'll see them. So we won't be supporting this amendment. It's not that we don't support the idea. We just want to make sure that further consultation is done and all sides get together and do what they feel is best. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would, there are two things I would suggest. First of all, given the actual size of this legislation, which is 386 sections that I see here, the fact that one of the opposition parties are bringing forward one amendment of 386 sections, I think that's pretty good, because the reality is this is probably, since my year and a half here, this is probably the largest piece of legislation that I've seen come forward in my year and a half or a year here. So I think, there is merit that if this is coming forward, or I'm sorry, I guess if this amendment is coming forward, there must be merit for it to come forward. The other point, and I'd look, if I could, Mr. Chair, to the solicitor for confirmation on this, but this is a bill, and so therefore, can regulations actually change this act?
Mr. Hebb.
They can supplement it. They can't change what's in the bill.
Right. So therefore, things like the minimum posted limit, that would stay in the bill. A municipality could decide to post a, if listed in here, the amendment which is on the floor would be to go to 30 kilometers. A municipality would be able to choose under regulations to set their own minimum to 50, but they couldn't go below the 30. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, not without the approval of the provincial traffic.
Right. So I guess in regards to this regulation, and municipalities would have the authority to do 50 if they so chose, or to go to 30. So I still think we support the amendment that's before us.
Ms. Gender.
Thank you. So with respect to the comments from my colleagues across the table here, there is a process, which I recognized in my comments. It's onerous. The Federation of Municipalities, HRM, have been actively advocating to change it. And with respect to consultation, there's been over 10 years of consultation. We've heard that. So why we need more consultation on this point is a bit baffling to me. And further to my colleague's point, yes, we could resolve some of this in the regulations, but I think what we heard is worth paying attention to, which is we're not asking for more categories. We're not asking for school zones or hospital zones. What we're saying is we should give municipalities the ability to just change those speed limits when they want to because of the safety concerns involved. And, to Ms. Lane's point about schools, sure, we can post a lower speed limit in a school zone, but a kid's commute often starts outside of that school zone. So with respect, I would still be looking for the government to join us in changing this legislation in a very simple way that makes our roads safer and removes barriers to municipalities to do the good work that they do.
Thank you. Mr. Jessup.
I'd be remiss if I didn't make a couple comments about likely one of the most consistent topics that gets brought up back home in Hammonds Plains, Lucasville. I would note that the rationale for not supporting this motion has to do with the fact that the province wants to maintain our responsibility in this conversation about what makes our roads safe. I totally appreciate the commentary, not only coming from my honorable colleagues across the floor, but from the presenters here today with respect to the intent to improve the way that our traffic carries itself on the road. We want to make sure that people are safe. That being said, there's an element of consistency that I think the province has the ability to enable. There are roads, municipal, provincial, that intersect one another, and that applies across the province. I will note that my experiences have been with the HRM, and in many cases, I would certainly defer to those traffic authorities, those engineers, who, and that's just my experience with respect to the HRM. But I do know that I guess the consistency that the province can enable throughout the entire jurisdiction is something that we seek to maintain as a province. So with respect, yes, the goal here is to, as completely as we can, make our roads safer for all Nova Scotians, and that's why the province seeks to maintain their seat at that table. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McGuire.
I'm just going to call for a vote.
Oh. Mr. Johns.
And I certainly don't want to seem argumentative, but on the previous speaker's points, I guess the amendment that's before us does maintain consistency across the province, because it's saying that the lowest limit is 30 kilometers. And, you know, as one of the speakers mentioned today, or at least two of the speakers perhaps mentioned today, as well as statistics that were given, as well as I think common sense, is sometimes a lower speed limit is safe. You know, my grandmother always used to say, if you're going to hit the ditch, hit it doing 20 and not 50. So I still support the motion. Thank you.
Ms. Zan.
Thank you. And actually, just to add to my colleagues' comments, we did hear about the safety issue and how if a car is traveling 50, then there is only, I believe, 10% chance of them surviving. Whereas if it's 30, they have a much greater chance at surviving if there's a collision with a person. So I think it would be very good if the province could consider our amendment, take it back, and then let us know. We would very much appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of other concerned citizens would as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion for an amendment, LAC NDP 1 on the floor. All those in favor? Call for a recorded vote. So we will start with Ms. Zan.
Aye.
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 Oui.
No.
No.
Nay.
No.
Nay. Motion's defeated. Do we have a motion on the bill? Mr. Jessup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 80, the Traffic Safety Act, be referred back to the House without amendment, please.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. That adjourns, that concludes the business for law amendments today. We will now adjourn.